Boston, the birthplace of revolution, the city of Harvard intellects, and the beating heart of Irish-American pride. But beneath its historic cobblestone streets lies a darker legacy, one built not on freedom, but on fear. Tonight, we peel back the curtain on the true power that ruled Boston's underworld, the real mob behind the Irish gangs. When most people hear Boston Mob, they think of the Winter Hill Gang, the brutal organization once led by James Whitey Bulger, the man who turned South Boston into his personal kingdom. But what if I told you the Irish mobs of Boston were never truly independent? What if the real bosses weren't Irish at all? Our story begins in the 1950s, when Boston's neighborhoods were carved up like a chessboard. Italian syndicates controlled the North End, Irish gangs dominated Southie, and the FBI quietly looked the other way as long as someone kept the streets under control. But the balance of power was an illusion. Behind every Irish gangland story, there's an unseen hand, a quiet alliance with the Italian Mafia, the corrupt political elite, and yes, even federal agents. Whitey Bulger wasn't just a gangster, he was an informant. On paper, he helped the FBI bring down the Italian Mafia. In reality, the deal gave him a free pass to run Boston like a mob boss. But where did that protection come from, and how deep did the network go? Let's rewind. Before Bulger, before the cocaine wars of the 1980s, there was Howie Winter, the original leader of the Winter Hill Gang. Winter's crew ran gambling, extortion, and hijacking rackets across Massachusetts. But it wasn't raw street muscle that made them powerful. It was access. They had ties with Raymond Patriarca, the head of the New England Mafia out of Providence. Patriarca allowed Winter's crew to operate freely as long as they paid tribute. The Irish weren't partners, they were subcontractors in a larger empire. And when Bulger took over, he inherited more than a gang. He inherited a system. The FBI used him as a weapon to dismantle Patriarca's rivals. Politicians took campaign money that smelled faintly of blood. And Boston police officers learned fast that some names didn't belong in their reports. Here's where it gets darker. The same federal agencies sworn to protect justice helped build one of the most violent criminal networks in American history. Why? Because the Irish mob was useful. They were brutal, loyal, and perfectly positioned to fight the right enemies. While the FBI was chasing Italian mobsters, the Irish gang grew unchecked. They infiltrated the unions, construction contracts, even City Hall. When Bulger's enemies disappeared, the headlines always blamed gang wars, but insiders knew better. Some of those hits were sanctioned from above. And then came the cocaine boom. The Irish mob, flush with protection and influence, saw new profits in the drug trade. Millions flowed through Southie. But with that money came paranoia. Bulger's empire became a surveillance state of its own. Informants watching informants, bodies buried under parking lots, and coded messages passed in church pews. Boston had become a city of whispers. But the real question remains, was Bulger ever truly the boss? Documents declassified after his arrest suggest something shocking, that higher-level players in law enforcement and intelligence circles might have benefited from keeping him free. Some reports even hint that Bulger's FBI handler, John Connolly, was only part of a much larger operation, one that blurred the line between investigation and collaboration. This wasn't just corruption, it was symbiosis. The mob gave the feds results. The feds gave the mob immunity. And Boston became the testing ground for an unholy alliance between organized crime and organized government. When Bulger fled in 1995, the city thought the nightmare was over. But the system didn't die with him. Construction, waste management, real estate, Even decades later, remnants of the Irish mob's shadow economy still circulate through Boston's political veins. Ask any old cop off the record, and they'll tell you, Southie never forgets. So what does this teach us about power? The Irish gangs were never truly free. They were pawns in a greater game played by men in suits, both criminal and federal. Boston's mob history isn't just about thugs and hitmen. It's about how easily justice can be compromised when ambition meets opportunity. Whitey Bulger became a legend because he embodied America's paradox, the outlaw who worked for the government. His story isn't a tale of loyalty or betrayal. It's proof that the line between law and crime has always been thinner than we'd like to admit. Today, the Irish mobs of Boston exist more as myth than movement. But the machinery they built, corruption, secrecy, control, still operates in quiet corners of power. Maybe that's the real legacy of the Boston underworld. It taught America that the most dangerous criminals don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they sign the paperwork. In the end, Boston's Irish gangs were never just gangsters. They were the face of a larger truth. Power doesn't care about nationality, loyalty, or neighborhood. Power only cares about survival. And in Boston, survival always came with a price.